How are you doing? Happy Vasaki. Okay, so guys, I hope all of those of you who are celebrating had a really lovely Vasaki. Hi Jay, we've had a really lovely day. I didn't post too much on social media, but I will do later. We had a really nice day as a family and ate loads, cooked loads. But it's been a really nice day. I've really missed going to the Gurdwara, but we've tried to make the most of it. So today I'm absolutely honoured to be joined by Manraj, also known as Northern Bindi. So Manraj is a mother to 3 beautiful children. She's an English teacher and she also shares her very unique journey on her blog page. So Manraj's first son, Arjun, was born profoundly disabled and sadly, after 17 years, he passed away almost 2 months ago, and it's been quite a journey for them. So this is the first time Manraj is going to be speaking about her journey and opening up since Arjun's passing. So hi, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you? Happy Vasaki.
And you? How was it? Did you get up to much or?
Not a lot because I've had shingles, so I've been indoors. But yeah, it's just been nice. I cooked and made a bit of prasad, some normal stuff. Yeah.
How are the shingles? Are you feeling a bit better, or is it?
I'm a little bit better, thank you. Not as sore as I was, but just had a fever for a couple of days and just feeling a little bit tired, but I feel a lot brighter today, thank you. Good,
I'm glad. Yeah, I've had some, it's not the nicest thing to have, is it?
No.
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Yeah.
I'm so honoured to have you, Manraj, because I know that especially the last few months have not been easy. More than the last few months, it's been years. And I know this isn't going to be the easiest thing that you do, but I know that it's something that you've wanted to do, and I'm honestly honoured to have you doing it here.
Thank you.
First of all, how are you? How are the family?
We're okay. It is actually the first time that I'm going to talk about what's happened, and it's going to be challenging, I have to say. But the girls are doing okay. They're very quiet sometimes, but then at other times we've got a lot of tears and a lot of hugging. They don't want to be left alone. And then my husband is trying to get back to some normality with work, as normal as you can get with what's happened with Arjun, and then obviously with the COVID-19.
Yeah.
He's a biomedical scientist, so a lot of the work that he does is at the moment working on the COVID virus. So,
okay.
Yeah. So he's sort of got back to work, but we're all waiting to get back to some kind of normality, which hasn't happened yet.
No.
I think we're all just. It feels like everything's on hold. Like our grief is on hold. Everything's paused. The world is paused, and our world obviously paused nearly 8 weeks ago. So yeah, it's not been easy.
No, I can only imagine. Before we start talking about your journey, it would be really nice if you could share a little bit more. I've given a very brief introduction, but a bit more about yourself, like just you in general, whatever you want to share as a person.
Me?
Yeah. I know this is a hard question, isn't it?
It's the hardest question. I don't know what to say. I'm going to be 44 next month. I'm an English teacher and I have been for 22 years now. I've been married 22 years this year as well.
Wow.
I had an arranged marriage. I met my husband once and then I married him a year later. We've been together 22 years. And it was an arranged marriage. I mean, it was introduction through family. And I think we just said yes in the end. I think it was just one of those things. It just happened. Can't really tell you now.
Was it just by picture? You're like, yeah, he looks all right.
Well, I saw the picture. I thought, yeah, okay, that's fine. And, you know, parents were like, yeah, you make a good match. You know, it's a nice family. You know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, ticks all the boxes. He was educated, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then I met him with the Bajoli, should I say? Okay. And we didn't actually speak on our own. We actually had the Bajoli there with us when we had our conversation. So it was only in 1998. I make it feel like it's really old-fashioned, but it wasn't. Actually, the real time, it wasn't that long ago.
But what is your secret? 22 years, that is amazing.
Do you know what? I really don't think there is a secret. You get to a point where you just kind of, I don't know, it's just life, isn't it? It just happens around you. So then we got married a year later, and I was studying. I was still doing I'd graduated with a degree in English studies and drama. And then I was doing my PGCE, so my teacher training for a year. So the deal was that I wasn't going to get married until I'd done my teacher training. So I was a qualified teacher when I got married. And so I think the rest is really history, to be honest.
History, yeah. What a journey.
And I've been teaching for 22 years, and I was one of the youngest in the country to become a head of year, then going on to be deputy head. My desire, my aims were to become a head teacher and to make a difference to the lives of children, and that's what I wanted to do. But things changed quite dramatically for us.
Yeah. So what was married life like before you had children?
It was interesting because we lived in the family home.
Okay.
For 2 years. My husband's father passed away a very long time ago when he was young, when he was 18. When my husband was 18. So we lived with the family, and then my husband got a job up here in the north of Yorkshire. I'm from West Yorkshire originally. I got married into Birmingham region.
Mm-hmm.
And he got a job up here with a pharmaceutical company. And as a result of that, we sort of relocated 2 years into the marriage up into Harrogate, which is a very pretty part of the year.
I've seen.
We kind of fell in love, and then we ended up staying here. And then we lived in, we did all the normal stuff. We didn't really travel very much because we were saving for a house. We were very good married couple. We were good kids. We did what we were told. Saving for a house. And then, we just kind of stuck here. My husband I stayed here because my job was here, and I got a really, I've been at the same school for 20 years now. We moved here in 2000 for 20 years, but because I was getting promoted, and so I stayed.
Yeah.
But my husband worked around, he lived and worked in America, down in Cambridge and Oxford. We had the kids. So I spent a lot of time here with the kids, actually. And then we had Arjun at the age of 26.
Okay, so about 4 years after.
4 years on, into the marriage.
Okay, and how was it? So when you fell pregnant, were there any kind of, I don't know, we had the usual screenings done, as you know. Was there any kind of, I don't know, inclination? Was it a fairly straightforward pregnancy? What was it like being pregnant with Arjun?
I was head of year at the time. I'd got my first big promotion. So I was all about work. For me, it was like, I'm having a baby, but it's all about I need to keep my career going. And I was like, I want to keep going. I'm going to work. I'm going to I can have a baby and I can have a career. I thought I could do it all. Obviously, not. But the pregnancy was very straightforward. I mean, trying to get pregnant was the most challenging bit because they'd found some abnormal cells during a smear test. So I had the threat that I was going to have cervical cancer. But when they did investigations, they realised that, yes, there was some there. So they managed to remove that. So I had treatment for that. But then they also found that I was quite heavily sort of scattered with endometriosis as well. So you don't know any of this until you have a baby. And I had to have treatment for that. When they put me into early menopause, so I had to take a medication that put me into menopause. I was 24 at the time. just stop all my body hormones. And anyway, it all sort of escalated, and then we were told that we couldn't have children, or it was going to be very, very difficult to have children.
Difficult, yeah.
And so we kind of sort of stopped everything and just thought we need to think what we're going to do and how we're going to move forward. And bearing in mind it was an arranged marriage, we didn't know each other. We were sort of 3 years into the marriage, to be told.
Yeah.
But I fell pregnant naturally. It just kind of happened. I think because we just stopped everything, it just happened.
Yeah.
And it was a shock. And the pregnancy itself was quite straightforward. There were no problems or issues. And to be honest with you, I didn't even have a midwife because I was so just getting on with it, and I was so thrown into my work that I just didn't register that I was pregnant. I was getting bigger, you know. I was walking around like a week.
Yeah.
I'm like 5'1", and I was like a great big bump. So I did look very funny, and the kids at school just laughed at me. Like, Miss, what's wrong with you? But yeah, so
Yeah.
we had one incident where I had a minor bleed, and that was at the start of the pregnancy, but it was just normal. I was told, you know, these things happen. It's okay. Yeah. And then it was the week before Arjun was actually born. He was born at 37 weeks. And the week before I was actually teaching. I was on my way to give an assembly to 300 children and secondary school children. And I was walking down the corridor, and I almost keeled over because I was having these Braxton Hicks, and I just thought, oh gosh, you know, it's painful. And I went in and I did the assembly, albeit in quite a bit of pain. And then when I walked out, something just wasn't right. So I went and saw the nurse, the school nurse, and she said, I think you need to go home. So I went home, and I ended up going into hospital.
Okay.
Because they weren't sure what was happening. So that was a week before I had him. They kept me in overnight. This was on the Saturday. Kept me Friday into Saturday overnight. And then they kept me in into the Sunday as well. And I had a scan on the Sunday where they said everything's fine. The baby's fine. But it just looks a little bit small for its dates. But other than that, it's okay. Go home and rest.
Okay. Yeah.
So I went home and rest. Didn't go back to work. And it was on the Tuesday that I had a midwife appointment. And during that appointment, everything was fine. And on the Saturday, I had Arjun. So I'd had a scan a week before, saying it was okay. I'd seen the midwife on the Tuesday. And yeah, so and everything was fine, apart from baby being small for its dates. But I was tiny. I am tiny, so it wasn't.
Yeah, really, and I guess babies are all different sizes anyway, isn't it? So I think there was, when I think back, even with Sergeant, there was one scan where they'd said, I think his belly was a little bit bigger than the rest of him or something. But I just thought, probably me eating too many pakoda or something. I didn't really think. Yeah. You don't really think anything of it, isn't it? As long as everything's kind of within the range, you think, okay, fine. So yeah, same with us. I mean, I had, I can't remember the exact number, but it was something quite ridiculous, the number of scans I had. And then nothing was zero. Nothing was detected. And it's just, for me, it was just like, okay, it was meant to be. We weren't supposed to know before because it was just meant to be. Tell me about the day that Arjun was born, the moment that Arjun was born.
Well, my waters broke at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was in bed and they just broke. And, it's like, I don't know if your water's ever broke, if your water's broke or not, I don't know.
No.
Did they not?
I've never had that experience, no.
Well, for those of you who are listening, will know that it's not a pretty sight. So my waters broke, and Dave, I sort of shook him. I said, Dave, my waters are broke. And he was like a little bit panicked, like, he's like half asleep. So we rang the hospital, and they said, don't rush. Your water broke. You've been in it before. Everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. We got ourselves to the hospital. And funnily enough, I've just written, I'm sort of writing everything down. And I've just written a chapter on the birth. It's all quite fresh. We went in, you know, the normal stuff, sit down, put your gown on, all that kind of stuff, put the baby monitor on. And when they put the monitor on, they sort of the nurse looked at it, or the midwife, whoever it was, she read it, and she just sort of said, oh, that's fine, and then she walked out. Then she came in again, and she looked at the monitor again and said, oh, baby's a bit sleepy. Like, okay. So then she came in for the third time with a big glass of freezing cold water, and she said, drink this, because it'll wake the baby up. And I was like, okay, I'd never heard of this in any book I've ever read. So they left us for a bit on the monitor. They kept, and then she didn't say anything. But looking back, there was obviously something that they'd detected.
Yeah.
Dave and I were just merrily lying there, and Dave was watching the TV, thinking, oh, there'll be some sport on. It was a Saturday, so, you know, this labour thing's going to go on for ages, so let's just watch some sport. It was that kind of
most of it.
Designing his snacks, what he's going to have, you know, all that kind of stuff. There's me looking for the gas and air by now. And the doctor came in, and he sort of introduced himself and went over to the monitor, looked at the monitor, and a nurse followed him in, and he just said, the baby's very sleepy. Yeah. And we need to get baby out. And I was like, what do you mean? You know, the nurse had just checked me, and I'm not even...
Sorry, Manraj.
It's all right.
Yeah. Okay, darling. I'll be down in a bit, Sorry, go on, Manraj.
It's all right. Priya would have done that, but I've told her not to come into the room.
I told him you still. Go on, say they said you need to.
So he came and said, baby needs to come out, and behind him came a nurse, and then came some other people, and I was just like, what do you mean? Because, well, we've got to do cesarean. We've got to do a C-section now. Like, you know, Dave and I completely panicked, shocked. First baby, we'd been in about an hour and a half, something like that. Just the baby monitor. There's nothing. No, it wasn't long. So there was obviously something wrong when my waters did break.
Yeah.
You know, there must have been. And he took us in. I had to sign loads of paperwork really quickly. The woman came in and started doing things to me, and I had to get into a gown, in another gown. The anaesthetist came in and started talking me through a spinal block rather than an epidural, which is what I'd wanted, because I was like, just give me every pain relief that's going, I don't care.
Yeah, I was the same.
And they came in and said, we need to put a spinal block in. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
They talked us through all that, at which point Dave had been taken out and said, we need to get you gowned up. So he'd been taken out, and the next minute I knew I was walking down into a theatre to have Arjun delivered. And it was always, it's a real blur because it happened so quickly. And Dave and I were just in shock. We just didn't know, we did not know what was going on. All we knew was that there's a baby about to come out, and it's not the way we planned it. You know, all the birthing plans, the books that you read. Yeah. It was none of that. No textbook delivery for us. No screaming, no shouting, no screaming at Dave, you know, on the gas. There was none of that. It was basically, we were taken so quickly. I mean, they put the spinal block in so quickly. Bearing in mind, Simran and Priya both were emergency cesareans as well. Yeah. So I've not had a birth. They've all been emergency deliveries.
Yeah.
And the room was full. All I remember was that the room was full, and all I could see was these shadows, these bodies moving around. And I know that there was a nurse and a doctor, a consultant in there, and they had the trolley out to one side where there was the gas and everything waiting for Arjun. So Arjun was delivered, and at 10:14. So we'd got in there at 8, just after 8, 10:14. So quick. He was delivered. And we didn't hear anything from him. They said, baby's born, and we were like waiting for this cry. And there wasn't a cry. And he he was essentially flatlining, so he wasn't breathing. We think his heart, looking back at the notes, he wasn't breathing, but he had a very faint pulse. So they managed to, I don't know what they did, but he just let out one scream, and it was literally just one scream, which was obviously his first breath. And then I didn't hear him again for 4 months, coming up to 5 months before we ever heard him again. And they took him into the incubator, and they did what they did. And I didn't see him. They made sure that there was a doctor or nurse standing so that we couldn't actually see what they were doing to him. And they picked him up just once. No, they didn't pick him up. That was pre. They didn't pick him up. They just wheeled him past me, stopped for literally a second, and that's all I saw of him. And then they took him away. And I said, somebody needs to go with Arjun. You can't just leave him. And then they said Dave can go with him. So Dave went, and they sewed me up and everything, took me back into the room, and we just waited. So I delivered, and I didn't even get to hold him. I delivered a baby, and that was it. Didn't have anything else.
What did they say to you? Like, what was?
It just said, all they said was that he's poorly. David being with him, and then when I was taken back to the room, and obviously I'd had you don't feel anything from your legs down.
No, yeah,
because you've got spinal block, and obviously, and my body had gone into shock as well, so
yeah,
I wasn't really fit. But Dave came back into the room. I said, "Have you seen him?" And he said, "Yeah, I've seen him, but he's in a separate room." So Dave didn't even get to see him. It was just through a window. He said they're all doing stuff to him, but we don't really know. We didn't know what they were doing. And then they took him. Then a doctor came in. Dr. Rahman, I won't forget him because he's the one who looked after Arjun for his first sort of 4 or 5 years of his life. And he came in and just said that he's very, very poorly. He's got a lot of blood come out of his nose and out of his mouth and his ears. He is very swollen. His body's full of fluid. We're not sure. What would you? The first question they asked us actually was, "Are you both related?" I think they thought there was some kind of genetic thing.
Yeah.
No, we're not. We're not related. And they just said, "What do you want us to do?" I think we were just in complete shock. And Dave was the one that turned around and said, "Do whatever you need to do." And Dr. Rahman said, "Are you sure? Because it's unlikely he's going to survive." And he just said, "Just do what you need to do." So they went, and I didn't see him. I just saw a photograph of him, a Polaroid, and the Polaroid was of him just hooked up to machinery. So that was the first real sight I had of Arjun, and for Dave as well, because he'd just seen people working on him. And we didn't see him again until he got transferred from Harrogate to Leeds, to the Leeds Peter Congleton unit, which is a specialist unit for paediatric care for children. And he was transferred over there in a specialist incubator. And Dave had gone with Arjun, and I was going to be transferred later in an ambulance. So when I wasn't transferred until I think it was 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, so I was still at Harrogate. Arjun had already gone over there, so I was just there without anything really, apart from family, but without anything. And then it wasn't until I got over to Leeds and they wheeled me in to see Arjun. I said, I need to see my baby. I need to see my baby. So I went down and they let me see him, and he was in intensive care, and he was hooked up to a ventilator and NGT tubes and long lines, and you learn this whole new language, this whole new vocabulary, and and that was him really. And we weren't told then about the outcome. We were just told that he may not survive, but we didn't actually know what had happened.
What that meant, yeah. Or did you know, did they even know what that meant? Like, were they quite straight up, or were they not sure? Or did you know, was it for you?
He was born with something called hydrops, which is when your tissue is filled with fluid from your body. So he looked like a balloon, basically, when he was born. He had no neck. I mean, he was just like a balloon. And what they had to do when he first got there was to drain that fluid. So that he was in a room on his own with some really specialist equipment, and we had a doctor there. He was a doctor. He was a professor, Professor Levine, who was one of the top professors in the country, which we weren't aware of. It's just that Leeds General Infirmary is a specialist centre, like Sheffield and Birmingham and Great Ormond Street. So we didn't know that. So they said he's got hydrops and we need to drain the fluid, and then after that we can figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
So they drained the fluid. So that was on the Saturday. Sunday they're continuing to drain the fluid, and it wasn't until the Monday when we went down to see him, when he'd been moved from the room on his own in intensive care to a room with 3 other babies that's still in intensive care. And when we went down to see him, the nurse was there. She just said, the doctor needs to speak to you. So, okay, fine. And I was in a wheelchair because I couldn't walk, all that kind of stuff. Took us into a separate room, and the doctor and a nurse came and sat with us. And it was at that point that the doctor said to Dave and I that we've drained the fluid, but he's had a huge brain hemorrhage. And we really don't think that he's going to survive. But if he does, he will remain in a vegetative state for the rest of his life, and you guys will be his sole carers. You're the ones that are going to have to look after him forever, and it won't be easy. And I remember me just turning around to Dave and saying, "What, you mean he's got cancer? He's got a brain tumour?"
Yeah.
And he just went, "No, that's not what they're saying." And he was trying to explain to me what was happening, and with him being a scientist and all that, in the medical field, that it was probably clearer to him.
Yeah.
And so we both I think we were both in shock, and I didn't really know what was happening. Dave was in shock, he was crying, and I was, we just didn't know really what was happening. It was just the two of us, my parents, Dave's mum and dad, nobody was there. It was just the two of us. And, we weren't given the option to switch the machine off at that point. They didn't say it to us openly, and I think if they had said it to us openly, the outcome might have been quite different. But we weren't given that option. And if we were, we missed it. We're not sure. But I think it goes right back to when the doctor had come in, and Dr. Rahman had said, "What do you want us to do?" And David said, "Do anything that you need to do."
Because perhaps at that point, did he understand what would you like us to do? Any new parent would say, do whatever you've got to do, right? You would just assume it's a healthy baby that's just going through a little hurdle. Just fix it. I want my baby. And as a mother, especially, your natural instinct is save my child. But this is why I asked you the question, what exactly did when he came in and he asked you that question, was he quite clear on what he meant? Or did he tell you, if we do save him, this is what the outcome will be? Or was it not kind of communicated at that point? It was kind of later.
It was communicated to us. It was communicated to us when we were at Leeds. But I think when Arjun was first born and the doctor came in, that even they didn't really know what was happening.
It was a bit too early at that point.
It was early. All they knew is that Harrogate didn't have the right equipment to do anything else with him. I remember turning around to Dave and saying to him, "I don't think Arjun's going to survive, and that you need to be prepared for that." And when we were in Leeds, I was the one that turned around and said that if Arjun's going to be like this, then I don't want him to be here, because I kind of saw my life flash in front of me of what was going to happen and what the future was going to be, whether that was selfishly, whether that was for Arjun, whether I have no guilt about that, because I actually saw this premonition of what my life was going to be. I saw it in front of me as clear as anything, exactly what was going to happen, that my life was about to change and not for the better. At that time is how I felt. And, you know, it was sad. It was just sad. You know, that's the point at which I started grieving, because it wasn't the baby that we were going to have. It's not the child that we were promised. It's not the child that we were going for. And I know you and I have spoken about this, and I know when you had Sergeant, we had some, we really did sort of talk about this and touch upon this.
I think when Sergeant was first born, I remember your message so crystal clear, and I remember the amount of comfort I took in it. I don't know what it was about what you'd sent me. I think it was because I just knew you got it. You just got that process, though they have different diagnoses, though it's, you know, whatever, but that feeling of having a child, you know, whenever you fall pregnant, you dream of this perfect life, perfect baby, you know. I had all these grand plans for my Arjun and Sergeant, and when he was born, that baby that I had planned all this with was dead. That baby died when Sergeant was born, and to try and love this baby with this unexpected diagnosis, you almost feel like you don't know them. You feel like it's a complete stranger. Even though you carried that child for 9 months, it's just so hard. And I think unless you've been through it, it's really difficult. And it might come across as quite selfish and horrible and but it's not very maternal. But no, it was just part of it. And I remember you literally took my hand, and I remember thinking, this woman is going through so much herself, yet she's taken the time out to message me. And I remember just thinking, thank you, God, for sending someone that. It wasn't just that you got it, it was also how open and willing you were to help others. And I think that's it wasn't like I'd reached out to you and then you had to reply to me. You felt obliged. You reached out, and that's a massive thing. Like, I'll never forget that.
I know. And I think what you've got to remember is that, you know, there are certain processes that I think we all go through, and and it's very difficult at times to admit to that actually I feel angry, and that I did feel that I'd been let down, and that, you know, that my life was going to change, and that I was going to have to be on my own. And Dave's life, and it wasn't just about me, it was us, it was our marriage, it was our relationship, the plans we'd got for the future. You know, we wanted to travel, do all those things. We'd got married at a young age, and we fell pregnant quite quickly, really. And that we were both in this place of, geez, that's our first child, and this is what we've got. This wasn't meant to be. And, you know, where I brought Arjun home after 3 months, it was a very, very long journey. And for those three and a half months, you know, we did not know. We didn't hear from him. He was very quiet. We were in Leeds, and from Leeds we got transferred to Harrogate to spend another 8 weeks in Harrogate. I didn't bring a baby home with me. I didn't have all that joy of everybody coming saying, oh, you know, we want to see the baby, or how beautiful. None of that. You know,
how was the family's reaction? How?
My mum and dad my mum especially is very, very, very religious. They were here every day. My dad would go to work, finish work, get in the car and drive here. Dave's mum lives a little bit further away, so it's slightly more challenging for her. But, you know, we had that, but my parents were the ones that were here. And my mum and dad went to India in the middle of the heat. Dad got heat stroke to do a dance at every Gurdwara they could go. You know, they did all that. But extended family, we didn't tell. All extended family knew was that Arjun had been born, that we'd got a boy. You know, they're all waiting for the laddu. They're in hospital going, geez, he's not going to survive. and extended family, some of whom are actually listening in on this, but we didn't tell anybody because we didn't know what the future was going to be. My mum and dad were very worried for my mental health and the way that I was, and Dave's. I was going to and from hospital every day, and I was expressing milk. I was adamant I was going to express milk. So
That's amazing.
It was just horrific. Being attached to this pump, and it was awful. And I'd go to the hospital at 8 o'clock in the morning. Poor Dave would go to work all day, come home, get me at the hospital. I'd spent all day there having to listen to all of the diagnoses that were given every day. They said he was deaf. They said he was blind. They said he had no movement in all four limbs, so he was quadriplegic. He couldn't hold his head. He couldn't feed. He didn't have any suction reflex. It was just every day there was something new, another piece of information telling me that my baby was not okay. I think the biggest thing was that they kept saying that he wouldn't feed, and I'd said that, and they wanted to put a tube into his stomach and do a peg feed, so he'd be fed through a peg for the rest of his life. Yeah. And I sat there every single day, and I didn't let them do it. And I put my finger in his mouth. I did everything possible because they said that part of the brain that was damaged from the brain hemorrhage controlled feeding, and that he'd never feed. And I remember taking him to the Gurdwara on the Sunday morning, and we knew that on the Sunday afternoon that they were going to have a big meeting about Arjun, and basically they were going to force us to have to put the peg feed in. So it was almost going to go as far as the courts at that point. Yeah. And I said, no, you can't. So the nurse, I said to a nurse, I'm going for this meeting. There's about 15, 20 people in there. We're going to talk about Arjun. I need you to try and feed him. And the nurse came running into the meeting and just said, stop, he's feeding. He's actually sucking. He's sucking on a bottle, he's feeding. And I'll never forget that, because I think that was the day that I kind of realised that it was all worth it. Yeah. Going from sitting there for so long, and that was actually really, that it was worth it in the end. And that was your perseverance and intuition that kind of got you there. Yeah. And, and when we brought him home, the postnatal depression kicked in. I think everything was so frantic for a while, and the postnatal depression kicked in, and I sort of started to reject Arjun quite severely, really. And that was when Dave had to take over. I was at home with him all day, every day, with Arjun on my own, and I had nurses. I got to the point where I wouldn't leave the house with him because I was so scared something was going to happen, because he was so fragile. And then, it was quite severe. I sort of rejected him. I remember once just leaving him and Dave at home and getting in the car and driving off and not knowing if I was going to come back again or not. And I think that was probably the worst place that I've been. And there's been lots of things across the 17-year journey that have been horrific, utterly, utterly horrific. Whereas there have been those chinks, like him feeding, like him starting to laugh, the first time he smiled, the first time he laughed, the first time he moved his head, because he wasn't, they said to us he was deaf. I knew he wasn't deaf because I knew he could hear me. And that time when the nurse at the hospital, the ring binders, you close the ring binder, they make that noise, don't they? Really quite loud. Yeah. And he closed it, and Arjun just turned. I just said, he's not deaf. I know he's not deaf. Yes, he's blind. I know he's blind. I know he can't see me. And you know what? That was the one thing I'd always said, that if I had a baby that was going to be poorly, I wished he could actually see me so that he knew that we were his parents. And the reality is that he couldn't see us. But he could hear us. Whether he knew we were his parents or not, I don't know. But he definitely recognised our voices. He definitely knew when we were in the room. And he knew his sister's voices. He knew Dave's voice, because when Dave came home from work, The first thing he did was say, "Hi, Arjun," and Arjun would be like, his head would be going, well, "I can hear you, but where are you?" And Jill, the carer, she'd been with us since I was 3. So he knew when she'd come in and she got some keys, so she'd rattle the keys, so he knew that she was here, and he'd shout if she wouldn't come to him straight away. And Simran and Priya, they'd jump on his bed, and so there's lots of lovely, lovely memories, but it was not without any heartache.
Would you say that the time where you came home and those first kind of, for me, it was probably a year that I was in that really strange, I didn't want to be here. Every thought possible crossed my mind. I even asked them, should we give him up for adoption? And literally he looked at me. Yeah, he looked at me and he was like, he hated me in that moment. And I just thought, but I don't feel like you love him either. So why are you getting so annoyed with me for asking you this? And I think it was in that moment that I realized, actually, you do feel protective of him, whether you love him in a way that you imagined you'd love this child at the moment or not, you've still got a protectiveness. And I remember running through all those scenarios thinking, if we gave him up for adoption, maybe we can just revert back to life before. And of course, there was nothing. I couldn't just press highlight and delete. It just wasn't going to happen. How did you navigate? What did you do in those first how did you get through it? What was your survival technique? What did you do? Did you literally just write it? Did you write? I know you write now. I know you're writing a lot now. You're sharing you're putting your thoughts down for your book and through blog posts and things like that. But back then, for me, writing wasn't therapeutic at all in those really dark stages. I couldn't write. Nothing helped me. I don't know how I survived it, but how did you?
Nothing helped me. I had to write it. I had a confidant who was the midwife. No, not the midwife. What's she called?
Health visitor?
The health visitor and the physiotherapist. He used to come to me. And the health visitor was amazing. And I talked a lot with her. I cried so much. I think I just cried. All I know is that I cried. And I have never, ever cried that much in my life, ever. And maybe that's why I haven't cried now that Arjun's died, because I haven't cried.
We spoke about this the other day, isn't it? Yeah, because you grieved almost then.
Yeah, and I rode it through, and it became like a job.
Yeah.
I need to feed him. I need to change this. I need to do this physio. I need to do that. And it was like a list. It was a job.
Yeah.
This is this appointment. This is this checkup. It was in a ring binder. All the appointment checkup, time dates, and it became very much sort of, I suppose, like it was a control mechanism, isn't it? Being a teacher, you have been a timetable, so it was all methodical, and I passed everything over to Dave when he came home, so he was really hands-on, and I ended up on medication. I went back to work. He was born in the January. I went back to work in the September because I thought I could do it. It's fine.
Yeah.
He was at mum and dad's for 3 days a week and 2 days at nursery. And so that gave us a bit of a break.
Yeah.
But it really hit home in the January when I just turned 1, when it hit me sort of like a train. I mean, it literally was just a crash. I just lost it. And that was the worst sort of 6, 7 months, I think, where I was at home on my own with him day in, day out, dealing with my own emotions, but then also trying to deal with him. And all I know is that I cried. I can't even tell you. All I know is that I cried every day for hours. Everything I did was just full of tears. I couldn't speak to anybody other than crying. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. And I think if it wasn't for Dave coming home and taking over so that I could have that bit of respite, or my mum and dad coming and helping, that I don't think I wouldn't have survived it. And I can't actually tell you honestly what it was that actually did it, apart from being very methodical and having a routine. And that routine is what kept some kind of normality that I recognised.
Yeah.
And I had to do the same when I had Simran, because Simran was 29 weeks, weighing £1.11. So we had the same routine with her 4 years later.
Crazy, 29.
So
tell us more. Yeah, that same. I can relate to that because when Sajin was born, even the feeding thing. So even though I felt like I was rejecting him, when he was in NICU, I was like, no, I have to feed him my milk. I have to feed him.
Yeah.
And I didn't, and it was really confusing because I was like, you don't even feel anything for him, and yet you're being so adamant. But anyway, I'd get up and I'd waddle downstairs because he was on a different floor, and I'd express and I'd feed him and stuff. And I remember thinking, no, I've got to do it. But it was just so I was confused by what was going on. And then when we came home, the same thing as you. It was literally like, someone's got to look after this child. So I'm his mom. It just kind of happened. And same as you, have to do this now, have to do this now, have to do this now. But I would look at him and think, why are you feeling all of this? Like, look at him. He hasn't done anything. And I would feel so guilty because I would just look at this innocent baby, and that's what he was. He didn't ask to be born. He didn't ask to have Down syndrome or whatever. You know, he was just this content little baby. He wasn't really a crier. He was actually quite easy compared to Arjun, my Arjun. And I used to think, why are you? And it was a really strange kind of. There was lots of contradictions constantly going on, and I just didn't really know how to make sense of it. But it's interesting that, hold on, Arjun's coming back up.
That's all right. I want to say hello to Arjun.
Hi.
I need to put my phone.
It's in your room, Arjun.
Can you come in and get it?
Oh, come in a second. I'll study. It's next to your... Breathe them.
No, can you have
Okay, I'll come in a second and I'll show you.
Right
It's
now.
next to Babaji's picture.
Right.
He wants his grip on. He got a little grip on today. I don't know what he wants to do with it, but yeah.
I think
tell us a bit more about... 1 second, Manraj.
No, it's okay.
Yeah?
It's fine.
Sorry, guys. 1 second.
Hey.
Okay, darling. I'll see you. All right, I love you. I'm so sorry. Tell us a bit more about when Simran and Priya were born, because they were also born premature, right? And you, at that time, you would have had Arjun as well to manage, plus...
Arjun was 4 when we had Simran. I
Okay.
went into acute preeclampsia. I was being monitored every month, so I had a scan every month, every 2 weeks initially, and then it progressed to every month with Simran at Leeds at the Peter Congleton unit, which was a specialist, and still where Arjun was born, but a different section, and they specialised in neonatal care. We'd had genetic testing done. I know you've had that as well. We had genetic testing done prior to falling pregnant with Simran to figure out whether it was something genetic or not.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was just something that happened with Arjun.
Yeah.
And Priya, Simran, it was my younger brother's wedding a week before, 14 days before, and I was swollen, and I was adamant that I was going to go to the wedding. I was swollen. I remember Dave having to put my shoes on for me and do the straps and wearing a sari, and I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't get these on. So he did my shoes and everything for me. And then I felt really poorly. I was looking after Arjun. I was at home, and we went for the scan on that day, and essentially they didn't let me come home. They just said, you've got preeclampsia, we need to keep you in. I'd gone with nothing. It was just me in a bag and Dave, and that was it.
Yeah.
We were just like, oh my God, it's happening again. We're going to end up with 2 babies in the same situation.
Is that what was running through your mind?
That was it. Both of us like, we've been checked every 2 weeks, every month. We've got scans of everything. Everything's fine. Oh my God, what's happening? And we were both just, we are going to have another baby like Arjun. And I was 28 plus 5 or 6 or something like that. And then it was another cesarean section because her pulse, she started deteriorating. Her heart rate had dropped.
Yeah.
And I had emergency cesarean with her at midnight, 12:01 midnight. And that was the same panic, same stress. She was rushed off to, in many ways, she was as poorly as Arjun because she was 29 weeks. She wasn't fully formed. She wasn't fully formed. She was this really hairy little monkey. I just remember she was screaming. We've never been so delighted to hear a child scream.
Oh, yeah.
She was just screaming. She was really feisty. It took 3 doctors because Dave, again, I was left on the theatre table. Dave went with Simran down to intensive care, and he came back and said it's taken three nurses to hold Simran down and a doctor to put all the things into her to get her oxygenating and everything. So it was 3 months. She was in intensive care. I remember going down to see her once, so she'd been moved into high dependency. We went down to high dependency, and we'd come home. We went to high dependency, and we walked in, and she wasn't there where she's supposed to be, and our hearts just sank. We were like, "She's gone. We've lost her."
Oh my gosh!
I can't. I mean, that was just horrific. Walking and your heart just dropped. She'd been moved back into intensive care because she wasn't breathing properly again, and they hadn't managed to get the message through to us. So the same as her, really, but thankfully she's fine, as you've probably seen in photographs.
Yeah.
But she's perfect. But again, it was 3 months. She was feeding okay, but she didn't start feeding. They can't feed until they're 34 weeks, because that's at 34 weeks is when suckling reflex. So she did start feeding. So yeah, it was.
I want to, but I'm not tired as I want to because Daddy's in.
And with the while you were pregnant, was it sort of quite scary even then? Did you have these thoughts and what was it? What was it like?
We were just really scared that the same thing was going to happen. We were just frightening. Every single movement, everything was heightened. Anything that felt wrong, anything that didn't feel right, we were straight at the hospital. We were straight to the doctors. There was no messing around. We were just absolutely petrified. Absolutely petrified.
I can only imagine. And the second time round, so with with Priya.
Priya, she's beautiful, crazy but beautiful. I started bleeding at 16 weeks.
Oh my God!
I was hemorrhaging at 16 weeks. I had something called placenta previa, preeclampsia with Simran. Nothing with Arjun. With Arjun, it just happened. Preeclampsia with Simran, and then placenta previa with Priya. The placenta lies quite low, and basically, I just every time I stood up, I just hemorrhaged. So I was in and out of hospital. So they put me on bed rest from 16 weeks onwards. And I just stayed in bed, basically, and I wasn't allowed to be further than 15 minutes from the hospital or from any hospital. And Dave was working in America at the time.
Oh, my goodness.
I'd gone over to America in the summer. He'd been there a year. So I'd gone over to America in the summer, which is when I felt pregnant. I returned, and this is what happened. So I was on my own here with Simran, premature baby. So Simran was only just turned 1. Arjun, and me pregnant with a baby.
Who was helping you at that time? Did you have somebody staying with you?
Jill was working for at the time, and my mum would come and go.
But you were alone essentially some of the time?
Most of the time.
Wow.
Yeah. And then she stopped growing at 32 weeks, and she was delivered at 33, it was nearly 34 weeks. But that was a drama in itself, because I was put in for an elective cesarean. Elective stroke emergency because she stopped growing. I'd got as far as the theatre table. I was sitting on the theatre table. They were inches away from putting the epidural in and to give me the C-section, and they stopped because they didn't have enough beds.
Oh my gosh.
And somebody had come in who was deemed more of an emergency than I was. So I was gowned up I was sitting on the theatre table. They were about to put the spinal block in, and literally the doctor said to me, I'd got the iodine, everything was done. She was sitting there bending over, and they just went, stop, we're going to have to stop.
How long did you have to wait then until?
24 hours.
Wow. God,
and I had to drive. We had to drive ourselves to we're in Harrogate, where she should have been delivered. Then I had to be driven the following day. We drove ourselves to another hospital in Leeds in order to have Priya delivered.
All such eventful births, isn't it?
Yeah, and I spent 2 weeks with Priya at LGI, St James's Hospital in Leeds, and then I discharged myself. I said, I'm going home. I can do tube feeding myself. I know exactly. I've done it with the other two. I'm going to just go home and do it myself. I can't be locked up in a hospital with Dave having to look after, having to go to work, Arjun to look after, Simran to look after. Simran was at my mum and dad's. Arjun was with Jill. Dave was working in York, so he'd drive from York to Leeds and back and do like a triangle to see all the kids. And it was like, this just isn't happening. So I just discharged myself in the end and came home and did it.
How was it having two young babies plus taking care of Arjun at that age? Did it feel, I guess people sometimes ask me questions like this, but you kind of don't know any different because
you don't.
It's just the way it is. Like you just, but was it?
It was like
I guess
it was a conveyor belt of nappies. Feed, nappies, bath, feed, nappies, bath. It was really, it was like, because you've got to remember, Arjun was always going to be in nappies or pads as you get older. Simran was 2 years. How old was Simran? I can't remember. 2 years and 2 weeks old. So I hadn't quite got her out of nappies. She was premature anyway. So if you corrected her age, she was only she wasn't even 2. She was 18 months.
Yeah.
And then I've got another preemie baby. So it was. I mean, Dave and I used to laugh about it because, they all had really long hair. So we'd do one hair after the other. And it was like feed, nappies, it was just constant. And it was just like, it was like having triplets. And it was hard work, but it was fun as well, because I was at home then.
Well, did you feel by then you were in a bit more of a better place and you kind of got your mojo with Arjun by then and things felt a bit more sort of, okay, this is the card we've been dealt and we're just going to ride it?
Yeah, it became the norm. It became our life. We didn't know any different. We'd never experienced what people would call a normal baby or a normal delivery or a normal birth or a normal pregnancy. We'd not had any of the fun or the joy of everybody getting excited that you've had a baby and coming home, and we didn't have anything. We didn't do anything, and it becomes so normal to us that I think if we had anything different, we wouldn't know how to cope. I mean, Priya was our most normal baby, but she was the one that was born premature as well. And we had to set, it was the same thing: doctor's appointments, physiotherapists, speech therapists, speech and language, dietitians. I mean, I spent probably a decade of our lives at Harrogate Hospital. I mean, a decade of our lives. So from the age of 26 to the age of 35, we spent our lives in hospital. I didn't know any different.
No,
and when it all stopped, I missed it. It was really strange.
What do I do with all this time? I think our thing has always been when instead of so I was always really apprehensive about taking Arjun to baby groups and things. I don't know why. I used to get overwhelmed by it. And when we had Sargent, in the beginning, it was really depressing going to all these kind of appointments.
And
the live is going to finish in a second. I'll just reconnect it because I didn't know there was a time limit on these, but I'll just reconnect it. Let me just do that now and then I'll sign you back in, yeah? Thanks, guys. Sorry about that. Just see once Manraj is back in here. Sorry about that, guys. I didn't know there was a time cap on these. I can't believe we've been talking for an hour already. Right, Manraj should be joining in a sec. Okay. Hi, sorry, I didn't know there was a cap.
I can't believe we've been talking for an hour.
Yeah, I was saying, so for me, with Sergeant, when we'd go to, I did find the hospital appointments quite depressing, to be honest. I don't know what it was. I still find them quite depressing. But I always saw the physio, the speech and language, the OT as kind of our equivalent of baby groups. I just tried to tell myself that that's what you're doing. You're just going to a baby group and it's fine. But so did you have to do it with all three kids?
All three of them. All three of them. And again, it was. I think, like you say, it becomes this kind of. It is like playtime. It's our connection with other people.
Yeah.
It's extremely isolating having children who have additional needs of any kind, whether they're premature or like Sergeant, with any autism. It could be anything. It's incredibly isolating. And one place where you can go and talk openly about things is at the hospital, because all these people and you kind of want to ask all those questions. Is this normal? Is this what they should be doing? I don't understand. And it kind of became a little bit of a day out at one point. With all the same. Where are we going? We're going for a trip to the hospital. Oh, okay.
We're going for lunch after.
With all three of them. And it gave me a bit of a break as well, I suppose, because I could hand them over. They were going to look after that, do whatever they were going to do. Especially when we used to do hydrotherapy. I don't know if you've done hydrotherapy with it. Well, you do.
No. He goes swimming. It's not officially hydrotherapy; it's swimming lessons, but it's the same thing, isn't it? It encouraged his muscles to help him walk a little bit more. Well, to bear weight on his feet anyway. But
he's doing really well. He's doing really well. Yeah. But it became a bit of a day out, really. And it was a day out with 3 children, and David had to work. So David took the day off from work, and then all 3 of us would traipse up to the hospital. Luckily, we don't live too far. But so, I don't know about you, but the dietitian was a huge part of the children's lives. Did you not need that? No, you see, we had it because obviously with them being so premature and with low birth rates as well, we had to have them on specialist milk. So I was mixing my milk in with the specialist milk to boost them. And actually, Arjun was still having specialist feeds and so on now. He was still having them.
Really? To keep his weight at a suitable...
Yeah, well, to give him foods that were calorific, because he'd stopped eating towards the end of his life. And right at the end, he'd stopped drinking as well. But he wasn't eating for the last I'd say probably for the last year, gradually his food intake had decreased really quite significantly. And he wasn't gaining any weight at all. His weight always fluctuated. But the specialist foods that we used to have to give him were there to fill in the gaps of when he wasn't feeding properly. And Simran had the same. She had specialist milk, which I had to ship over to America with us when we went over to stay with Dave for a bit. And then Priya had the same as well. But Priya had to go to soya milk because she had really severe eczema. So the dietitian played a huge part of our lives. Really huge.
With all 3 of them, you've had to have the same kind of, which is interesting because you think, okay, it's interesting to see that they haven't got, the same diagnosis or anything, but for different reasons, children need different things, and it just so happens all of them needed the same type of things for different reasons. But
Yeah.
with Arjun, did you guys go on holidays? So you went to America. You just mentioned you went to America to stay there for a bit.
Yeah, but we left Arjun here because he wasn't allowed to fly. So he stayed with
So he hasn't.
He stayed with my mum and dad. So he stayed with my mum and dad.
Yeah.
And he wasn't allowed to fly because we weren't sure how his fontanelle was still open. So everyone that's had a baby, you know, or even if his fontanelle was still open, and it only closed probably about 2.5 years ago, which was when he started to deteriorate, because he has something called hydrocephalus as well. So for those of you who don't know, hydrocephalus is a buildup of fluid in the brain from your spinal cord, and your fontanelle is open. It should really have fused within 6 months is it now? I can't remember however many months it fuses within. But his fontanelle was still open, and because it was still open, it was easing the pressure in his brain. So they weren't sure that if we took him in a plane, what could happen.
Would that put pressure? Yeah, not really.
So we just couldn't take the risk.
How did it feel going away without Arjun? Did it almost feel like a moment, like kind of a period of normality, or did it feel? How did it feel?
Initially, it was really hard because we were still being told that we don't know how long we've got with Arjun. And when Dave went over there to work, we had to put our lives on hold up until Simran was born. And we'd said that basically we can't do anything because Arjun's going to die.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to fall pregnant with another baby because Arjun was going to die. And we did, then we had Simran. And then when we left him with mum and dad, we knew he was in the right place because if anything happened, he's with mum and dad.
Yeah.
It was fine. It was going to be okay.
Your parents sound amazing.
Yeah, without them, I don't think we'd have. I know I wouldn't have got to where we are now. But and they have they still do. They have a very, very special bond with him. And when we left him, I felt okay. There was apprehension, fear. Leaving with all the telephone numbers. This is the doctor. This is what happens. But then when we got over there, I was really sick because I didn't realise that I was pregnant with Priya. I was pregnant with Priya, and I found out in America I was pregnant with Priya. And I had Simran, so I was just like sick. It was just thing. But it felt good because it did mean that we had some freedom and we got time we managed to spend some time with Simran.
Yeah.
Simran and not Simran and Arjun because he needed so much support. But I think it allowed us to bond much, much more with Simran.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was lovely.
I can relate to that in a roundabout way with the boys. There's a lot of things that we can't really do because Sarjan can't participate in it yet because he's not, he's not walking or he doesn't quite comprehend what something involves. And I feel bad for Arjun sometimes because I think you've had to grow up a lot quicker than the average 5-year-old, and sometimes he can be such hard work, Arjun. And I'm always really mindful of the fact that actually you've seen a lot and you've been through a lot, and this is one thing that I would say, families that have somebody with an additional need in them, the understanding you have within your four walls is something that nobody from outside, not your parents, not your siblings, nobody can understand it. And that's something that binds you very close. And that kind of, sometimes, when Arjun might play up or whatever, I know that, family might be thinking, oh, why are you not just, and it's just like, no, because I know exactly why he's doing it. He said the other day, how comes I always get into trouble and Sarjan doesn't get into trouble as much as me? And I'm just like, oh gosh, it's, and then it's this whole, catch-22, because at the same time, I don't want him to resent Sarjan for always getting away with things or to not have the respect for Sarjan that he understands certain things. He does understand certain things. Sometimes Sarjan chooses to be a little a little so-and-so as well. But
they all do have.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's very normal.
Yeah, so that whole thing about spending quality time, and I know you guys have done it with the girls, and I remember when I saw you were going to Dubai, that excitement that I felt for you, just for the girls to experience normal things that children of their age should be. The same with Arjun. Sometimes we do things alone with him just so that he has a normal day and a normal kind of outing. It's good for them, and it's I know it's hard to balance. Like, how did you guys kind of balance giving the girls a typical life with also providing the best care for Arjun? I guess Jill was a big part in enabling that as well.
Jill was, and it still is actually. She's a huge part of that. My parents were a huge part of that. But the biggest, when Dave and I had the girls, you know, we made a very, very conscious decision that Arjun doesn't have a future. Yeah. The girls do. And that we didn't want, you know, we both agreed very much that we needed the girls to have as much of a normal upbringing and normal life as possible. And we were adamant that neither of them were going to become Arjun's carers. You know, we didn't want them to take that role on.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, we didn't want that for them.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of occasions where normal everyday life was one of us would take the girls out and the other one would stay home with Arjun. That was normal. So like on a weekend, the girls, you know, I'm usually with the girls after school and so on. So on a weekend, normally on a Saturday, Dave would take the girls out. They'd go shopping. They'd go, even if it's just to Sainsbury's, more often than not, it was to Starbucks for a hot chocolate and cream. You know. So he is fantastic at doing that with the girls and always has been. And, you know, he's just brilliant. That's what he does. And I'm like the disciplinarian and, you know, Mum, you've got to do this and clean the house.
It's not the same.
You should have seen them yesterday. They were absolutely distraught at the fact that I was getting them to do the housework with me. But, you know, so I'm sorry, but you've got no choice. But that's what we did, and we spent a lot of our time not doing things together. And then we had to make a decision and say, right, we need to start thinking about Arjun going to some kind of respite.
Yeah.
And it took us a long, long time to be able to work with social services, because people don't talk about this, but when you have a child with severe disabilities, you have a disabled social worker who is there, you know, and they deal with all these things, especially with somebody who's profoundly disabled and life-limiting as Arjun was. So we started to go down the route of him having one overnight stay a week at Jill's.
Yeah.
And that then we wouldn't use it because we were scared, because he'd never been overnight. You know, the first time we left it was really difficult. We just stayed at home because we were like, well, what do we do? What if someone rings us? But then gradually we found that respite was so vital to ensuring that we had a relationship with the girls, that they knew that this is life, normal life. Sense. And that if Arjun was okay, he would have been going out with his friends. You know, he would have been going out and doing his own thing. So in reality, being around their brother wasn't something they were going to be doing all the time anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know, we tried to balance it. It was hard because there was occasions when we had to turn around and say, we can't, you know, we'd be in the middle of getting ready to go somewhere. Arjun would have a huge seizure or he'd start vomiting. And we just said, we can't go, and we just have to stop everything. And those were the toughest times because the girls didn't always understand why. Well, why can't you just go? It's fine now. But actually, no, this could go on longer. He's had a seizure. We've had to give him emergency medication. You know, where we're administering these drugs which are licensed and they have to be kept in locked boxes, and you know, all this sort of medical equipment around us. And the girls didn't really quite understand that. But then they didn't know any different either, because so it's not like they'd seen somebody who was normal in their family, and then suddenly Arjun had come along. They knew Arjun for what Arjun was, and that was it. They didn't know any different.
No. What was their relationship like with Arjun?
Oh, they adored him. Absolutely adored him. And they used him as an excuse for getting out of anything. It's like, you need to come and do this. Oh no, Arjun, we need to sit with Arjun. We need to make sure he's.
Oh.
No, Arjun's fine. No, but he can hear us. He wants us to sit with him. Yeah, but he's fine. So they were always in his room. They'd sit on the end of his bed, watch TV with him. Arjun loved music. He loved drums, Keithan. He loved his favourite at the moment was what's that film called? Oh, The Greatest Showman. The music from that. So Dave used to often put that on in the background. And to be honest, we spent most of our time in his room rather than in any of the rooms in the house. We were in here with him. And they'd started to want to feed him.
Yeah.
And they'd started to want to give him his drink. And towards the end of his life, it was becoming more difficult because he was screaming out so much in pain. And it was hard for us to be able to deal with that, but it was becoming more challenging and more emotionally draining for Simran and Priya, especially because Arjun used to be up through the night. So, for 17 years, Dave and I hadn't had a good night's sleep. We'd never slept through. And the girls, Priya can sleep through anything. I have no idea how she can sleep through anything. Simran wakes up. So that was becoming more difficult because they were beginning to feel it. They were tired. Yeah. And I think also emotionally drained because they could see what was happening. And they knew we'd never lied to them. Ever since they were tiny, we'd always said to them, and we'd used the words, Adam's going to die. We never kept it hidden.
Quite open and honest.
Completely honest. Despite what, other people around us and family would say, we can't, you shouldn't be telling the girl through. No, one of the biggest things that I'd found in my training when I was training to be head of year was you have to be open with children.
Yeah.
And when I'm teaching, I've also come across a lot of children who have had siblings who have passed away. And in their teenage years is where it comes out in different ways. And it was the biggest sort of consensus was that we were never told the truth from the beginning. Our parents kept it hidden from us. So we were very, very good. So they always knew that Arjun was going to die. They always knew that Arjun was only here for a short time. And as they were getting older, they were finding that more difficult to accept and deal with. And we just kept talking to them, being honest and truthful and talking to them. And that was the biggest.
That's so admirable because I know, especially in our community, people tend to shy away from these topics. They don't want to talk about them. They don't want to sort of confront them. And I think it's so nice that the girls can speak openly about things like death, which is such a massive thing in a safe space. And I don't think it's really for other people to have an opinion. I mean, they can have an opinion, but unless you're living it, breathing it, having to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, it's very hard for somebody else to comment on what the right or wrong thing to do is. But I think that sounds like you've given them kind of that foundation and you've set the expectation. I'm sure that would have been tough for them to process, but it was going to be tough for them regardless. And giving them that.
It's not made it any. I mean, when Arjun died, and Dave and I were with him. He died in our arms, and we didn't tell the girls till the morning. They'd been with him just 40 minutes beforehand. And my last photograph is with Simran, Priya and Arjun, all three of my babies together, laid on the bed at the hospice. And Arjun died an hour later, 45 minutes an hour later. And the girls knew, because we were at the hospice, they knew he was dying, and they knew that he wasn't going to come home because we'd kind of known that the moment he went into the hospital under these circumstances, he wasn't going to come home again. And Priya was just devastated. She was just crying, and just as soon as she went in to see him, because we did let them go and see him, and she just laid on him. She just put her head on him and just laid there and wouldn't let go of him. And Simran just stood and just looked at him, and then she touched him, and Mum and Dad were there, and me and Dave, and so on. She just cried. That was hard. That was really hard, seeing them two having to go in and see their brother. That was really hard because, you know, we knew it was going to happen, but we didn't. But to see that, you know, that was mine and Dave's babies together for the last time. That was it, and that's just something that can never come back, and that he's gone, you know, and he's gone, but it doesn't feel like he's gone because we still think we feel like he's at respite and he's going to come back, and we feel like everything's on pause, and it just doesn't feel real. Dave was just devastated. He's just crying and crying and crying, and just he just didn't, you know, from the day he was born. I haven't cried, I haven't felt it, but I think you're so busy trying to look after everybody else, that maybe mine just stopped, and I'm sure it'll come out at some point. There'll be a day when it'll happen, but everybody grieves differently, and it's different emotions, and it's different. I just think it's different. I think as a mother, you know, you gave birth to that child came from you, you nurtured it, you fed it, you did everything that you could, but I couldn't save him. And I think that's the overriding thing about everything, that ultimately we couldn't save him. There was nothing, we couldn't save him. There was nothing we could do. And there'd been times over the years where we'd sat back and said, Arjun, we think it's time for you to go now. You're in too much pain. You're too much suffering. We can't, it's difficult for us to watch you. It's difficult for our parents to watch us suffering and their grandchildren. And it's difficult for us to watch you suffering, Arjun, because you have no clue. You can't tell us. All you can do is cry. You laugh and you cry. You can't tell us what's hurting. It's a guessing game. And you know, a lot of people have said, you know, he came to you because you were parents who could look after him. He came to you because you were going to do his seva. You were going to be his carers, and you know, God chose you. And you know, you can have all the platitudes that people give you, but the reality is that nobody's lived our lives for 17 years. You know, from our mid-20s to my mid-40s now, this has been my life, and Dave's life, and the girls' lives. And you know, even though we knew he was going to die, somehow we were preparing ourselves for so many years for it to happen. And then when it did happen, it happened so quietly and so peacefully that it almost felt unreal. It just didn't register. When he died, Dave just cried. He was just inconsolable, and I didn't. And somehow you feel judged for that you haven't cried in that way.
We've spoken about this, though, haven't we? That everyone is so different in the way in which they grieve. Sometimes it's just processing it, and like you said, you cried so much back then. Tears aren't necessarily, just because you haven't cried, it doesn't mean you're not feeling. You are his mother. Like, you gave birth to him. And yeah, I guess and also perhaps because you've got the girls, you want to be strong for them. Not that crying is a sign of weakness, but perhaps they're carrying you through this at the moment.
And I think
I don't know, but
I think also because in my heart I know he's gone somewhere better, and that in my heart I know that if he was suffering so, I mean, day in, day out now, these last 6 months, since when was it since last year, he was just becoming weaker and weaker, and it was just more and more challenging. You know, I was running out of school. I was in the middle of lessons. I was getting phone calls saying, "Come and get him. You need to take him. He's had another seizure. We can't do." And it was becoming such a drain on my life. It was becoming such a stress on, you know, our relationship. It was becoming a stress for the girls. It was all, and he was suffering so much, and to watch that suffering day in, day out, is exhausting.
Yeah. We were speaking
just. You know what? it was time for him to be at peace. It was time for him to be at peace.
We spoke just a few weeks before him. We spoke just
that we don't want to forget him.
Yeah,
memory lives on.
Yeah,
memory lives on. That there's some kind of because what Dave and I did was that after Priya was born, we started to do a lot of our own charity work, and we used that charity work as a way of wanting to leave some kind of legacy for Arjun.
Yeah,
and which is when I started the blog, which initially started off about Arjun. And I stopped writing about 2 years ago when things were really hard with Arjun.
Yeah.
And carried on doing some of the charity work in the background, which I still do. And what my fear is that that's going to end up drying up or stopping, and Arjun's going to be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And not knowing who I am anymore. I suppose that's the biggest thing, because it's Raj, it's Manraj. Oh yeah, she's got a son, it's Arjun, who is really poorly, and he's life limiting. And well, there's more to me than just that.
Yeah,
and that's what worries me, that I've not got a purpose anymore. And what will that purpose look like? What will the future look like? And I know, I've put sort of various things on my page and so on, and with posts and thing about trying to think about the future and what is that going to look like? How do you channel all of this experience so that it's going to help other people, and it's going to help raise, I know Arjun's not here, but help to raise Arjun's profile and his legacy, that he was here. This is what he taught us as a family, not just me, but us as a family.
Yeah.
How to get that message out there, and that, like when I connected with you, and it was from the heart, that actually I do know what you're going through, and if you need help, I'm here, I can help you, I can listen to you. And this is the first time we've actually met.
Yeah, this is
the first time we've actually how many years? Gosh, 2, 3 years now. We're messaging and stuff, but we actually haven't met. And I think my biggest thing now is to carry on the way I've helped you, to help and support other people, and to show that life does carry on, and that you're a very different person at the other end of this.
Yeah.
But there still is the essence of you there, and that you are still able to help and support and get the message out there that actually life carries on, and you come out the other side, albeit a different person, but definitely stronger and more powerful. And that Arjun's life wasn't a waste, and my 17 years with Arjun wasn't a waste, which is sometimes what it feels like.
Yeah.
A waste. And I don't know how to do that, or what that's going to look like. I don't know.
Time. Unfortunately, time is like the enemy of the innocent. I know, I've been. Time is what is going to get you more clarity, but when you're in a moment, time is like your worst enemy, because you just kind of want to know where you're going. But just carry on doing what you're doing, Manraj. Take time for yourself. Remember to put yourself first as well, and just continue. Yeah. Can you believe they're still awake?
That's all right. Mine are awake as well. I'm going to watch Killing Eve.
But what would you say is the lasting impact that Arjun has had on your life?
Empathy and compassion for other people.
It's
massive.
It's 9 o'clock.
It's huge. And empathy, compassion, a willingness to listen to other people, and a willingness to give a bit of yourself out there to support and help others. And I think that, and charity, the biggest thing that we've done is that we've gone out and done charity work, and that's something that, will always underpin anything that I do, anything that we do as a family, that, we need to make sure that through us, because of Arjun, some good comes.
And it has, and it will continue to.
I hope so. Just
I know.
Well, you've been through the mill as well. You've had enough to cope with as well.
I think everyone's got a story, haven't they? But even though everybody's stories are different, some way we can just connect. And I know I turn to you all the time when I'm, having a moment, and I know when we've spoken that there's some things you just get. And I think having that.
Yeah. And trust, isn't it? It's very much about trust as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think
definitely.
I always try my hardest to put other people and their emotions first, because I know what it feels like to not have them put first, and that when you've had to cope with a lot of it yourself and kept a lot of it hidden. And,
yeah.
I've made no qualms on here that I still have therapy now, and I tap in and out of it, and that's my release.
Yeah.
And I take on other people's grief and other people's feelings and emotions, but that's the kind of person that I am, and that's what I like doing, because for me that's doing Say Right in itself.
Yeah.
I'm open to anybody messaging me, talking to me, because then I'll be very honest. And yeah, 17 years is a long time to learn to be like that.
Just make sure you're taking care of yourself too. We're all here. There's so many of us that literally adore you. We find you so inspiring. You have helped so many people. And if it wasn't for Arjun, we never would have connected.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? That's the legacy he's left. That
yeah.
For him, we wouldn't have connected.
No, and there's so many.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many people that, because of Arjun, you've helped, and you've turned a situation that could have been, like there's many, especially Asian women, that will just kind of go within themselves and that's it, shut the whole world off and hide things. And you've not done that. You've showed your beautiful boy, you've showed your beautiful family. And the one thing that I really take from your page is the love between all five of you. I can literally feel it, and I get it in terms of what you guys have been through together. Only you get, and you can see it. There's just such a strong connection, and honestly, I have so much respect for you. And yeah, I
can't wait for us to actually meet, so I can give you a
hug.
Same. Because I'd like to. There's lots of you on here who are down in London, and we definitely need to meet up. I'd love to just meet everybody and see people, because you can have a conversation with people, and whether it's by texting or messaging and so on. But I think meeting people face to face just gives you that real connection. And I'm meeting, and I'm a very happy person, as you've probably seen from the camera. I'm constantly hugging everybody.
Well, hopefully the baby brain event will still be happening in November.
Fingers crossed.
God willing. Manraj will be coming to be a guest speaker there, which I'm really, really excited about. But yeah, Manraj, thank you so much for joining. I've got to go and put this terrace to bed, because Arjun is literally
and Dave's going to come in and go, what are you talking about? How many hours have you been on?
Time has gone so quick. It's been such a pleasure to hear more about your family, and thank you so much for sharing some of the most kind of deepest, darkest times you've been through, but also the nice victories that you've had as well. Thank you. And know that you are so loved.
I feel like I need to interview you next time.
Oh gosh, like motor mouth.
I'll interview you at some point. But